We've launched. Welcome, everybody. Oh, sorry. Jump in there.
No, it's cool. Good.
Okay.
Did you say it?
Good start. We're doing it.
Come on, 203. We can't have
Planet
one
Green
without
Trees,
that.
officially episode number 203. I am calling it. I came up with the name by myself. It's called I Was Right and You Were Wrong. I will explain that a little later. Today's June 12, 2014, Thursday. Show will be said 8 to 10 p.m. tonight. Call number is 1-347-326-9626. You can listen to us at www.planetgreentrees.com. And good evening. You are listening officially. We're starting officially right now. Planet Green Trees, episode 203. I'm your host, Michael Komorn. From Komorn Law, and we are a Blog Talk radio show. We're going to be talking about medical cannabis reform, and everything in between to help bring this information, which is relevant, timely, and pertinent, is first Chad from the Birmingham Compassion Club.
Good evening. It's nice to be here.
We have the one and only news editor for Planet Green Trees and the editor-in-chief of the Compassion Chronicles, Rick Thompson.
Hey, it's me.
Jamie a little en route. We understand is going to be as a traditional 10 to 40 minutes late. He, of course, is the person responsible for and the producer of Planet Green Trees and in charge of lining up the phenomenal guest we have tonight. I want to thank Jamie for all his hard work in doing that, even sometimes in 4 hours' notice. But the one and only Jamie Lowell of the Third Coast Compassion Center. Oh, he's here. Hello. Tonight, we are going to be talking about the Michigan Supreme Court, who decided today whether or not to hear several medical marijuana cases, including the infamous and household name at this point, Earl Carruthers, and the legality of concentrates. My favorite topic as of late, I think every other sentence or paragraph that I speak about in court involves Hartwick and Tuttle. I even begin to call it Hartwick and Tuttle's. Clinical relief in Bylsma. Also, we're going to be talking about two patient-friendly House bills, 4271 and 5104, are still pending in the Michigan Senate as they're being passed out of the House with overwhelming bipartisan support earlier this year. And we continue the discussion of the Michigan Supreme Court ruling in Ter Beek versus Wyoming, including number 9, or footnote 9, as we mocked and analyzed last week, which is one of the legal bases while some of the cities and townships are interpreting their authority to still regulate and restrict the protections of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. And to speak on this, if we haven't had already multiple lawyers discussing and interpreting the opinion, we had the actual lawyer from the ACLU, Dan Carruthers, who argued the night of the decision where he discussed and analyzed it. We had lawyers on last week, and we continue. But this week, we've got a lawyer himself, but also the named plaintiff, John Ter Beek, who is a resident of Wyoming and is the individual who is responsible for suing the city that created an ordinance that's more restrictive than the Michigan medical marijuana. I'm looking forward to talking to him. I'm excited that Jamie was able to book this. We're going to hear directly from him. Also, what I like to call the hardest working woman in Lansing, Robin Schneider, the legislative chairwoman for the National Patients' Rights Association. She's going to be calling in and updating us on how the bills are doing, what, if anything, has developed since the Richardson payoff fundraiser. I'm just kidding, of course. And, of course, also calling in my good friend and colleague, David Radoy, but he's calling in from California. He's not here, which means, of course, he's not going to get any chance to do any time for Rant. He's going to get no free sponsorships for time. Also, he's visiting a fellow friend and compatriot, who I like to call the Professor, John Targowski, who we haven't heard from in a while, and he's going to offer his thoughts as well. We're looking forward to hearing about that. I'm going to rant in a little while. We're going to get the news from Rick, and Jamie's going to talk a lot tonight. Chad's going to be more vocal than he's ever been. I want to give a couple shout-outs, of course, to the sponsors of the show and friends that help the cause, my personal cause. First, Dewey, Pam. Dewey's been driving my ass all over the state. I wouldn't be able to make it anywhere without him, despite the chaos of all of it. And I want to thank Dewey and, of course, Pam, and make sure that he's where he has to be. I want to thank the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association and all the moderators and administrators that volunteer their time week after week to make the forums a safe and environment climate to evolve the conversation about medical cannabis and cannabis reform. Dr. Kumar Singh of Greenlight Clinic, when in need of a quality gold standard certification, remember that follow-up appointments, commitment to finding medical efficacy of your marijuana use are critical. I would say 95% of the facilities currently operating, serving in this regard, are failing. And if held up to scrutiny, they would result in you or a person that was looking to defend themselves under the Michigan Medical Marijuana. It would be a failure. So consider this when you get your certification. I recommend Dr. Kumar Singh. Also, the marijuana rancher friend and fellow advocate, call for appointments of the Cultural Center. I miss anybody? We got them all? Okay. Of course, I'm going to rant a little bit. Let me check the time because I know I always go over my a little bit. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about some events that transpired. First, a little bit about some activity that's going on in court and just this. It's always a wild ride, and if you talk to me every day, I tell you how crazy the stories are, and I've always maintained
like
that
Mr. Toad.
I've always maintained that the value of being a lawyer is not so much the whatever potential economic reward of the struggle, but it's the stories. The stories that come from the courts are worth value. And, dealing with it, of course, is another story, but the issues that I'm dealing with this past week that have been, unfortunately, thrown into involve some really serious and strange and unusual behavior directly linked to certain duties and responsibilities of a prosecutor and what they are required to do. And I've never had this situation before. I've never been a lawyer that looks to, call out other lawyers for bad behavior. I'm not looking for it. If I'm compelled to and ethically I'm required to, I won't hesitate. It's yet to happen. But I'm a lawyer that, look, even if I am totally opposed to the opposing side and we are adverse in every regard on every single issue, can't even talk, but they have a vacation plan and going out of town with their family, I'm not going to object. I'm not going to, not agree to a adjournment because we're still allegedly human beings and have families and trying to be normal. But there's some situations where you have to look past that because there are issues that are above and beyond myself as an individual or a lawyer or the prosecutor's office. And I'm going through a situation right now that has unfortunately directed all of my waking hours to addressing a very, very sensitive and ethical issue that I believe has been violated in a certain prosecutor's office, dealing with issues of conflict of interest, dealing with usurping by trust confidences of a defendant, and then prosecuting them in the same case, making comments about a witness who happens to be the officer in charge of the case, and the affiant of that their integrity, character, and propensity to tell the truth cannot be trusted, amongst other disparaging comments about that affiant and or officer in charge. And the ethical issue that comes up is that lawyers are required to not, under any circumstances, call witnesses to the stand that they know are lying. Hearing, not just from my client, but multiple individuals, hear this prosecutor who in a former life as a defense attorney comment on the quality of the witness and affiant, his integrity makes it appear that there's no way ethically you could call the witness to the stand. There's rules of how attorneys can conduct themselves. I've often said, if, despite the negative jokes and commentary at times, and the no tread marks, no skid marks on the road in front of the lawyer, but in front of the snake, etc. If everyone was a lawyer, the world would be a better place, because lawyers are held to a standard of conduct and scrutiny that is greater than lay people. In other words, as a lawyer, I have a duty to avoid the appearance of impropriety. If I say I'm going to do something, I have to do it. But when I get involved in a case and declare that I am doing this and I'm involved, I have certain legal responsibilities that my license will be held accountable for in my profession and my ticket if I'm not fulfilling those obligations. And we all live by it. I know I'm held to it, and I know prosecutors are held to it, and I know opponents are held to it. And I would say that unlike, for example, the police force, when lawyer is, acts below the requirements, the ethical duties, the responsibilities of their commitment and duty and oath that they've taken, they will be punished. They will be held accountable. That there's a mechanism in place to flush these factors out. And oftentimes, there's specific things that would result in a lawyer having action or sanctions taken against him. But there's a mechanism in place. I use this example all the time. If a police officer is caught being misleading at an evidentiary hearing where you're challenging the accuracy of the affidavit or the probable cause of the affidavit, and the court rules that there was misrepresentations and the affidavit wasn't true or there was falsities, and the court quashes the search warrant and suppresses all the evidence, there's no list that these officers that conducted this bad behavior goes on. There's no referral to an agency that's going to investigate how an individual's constitutional rights were violated, how police officers that have a certain amount of authority can act, did this, and that there's no punishment. In fact, oftentimes if that hearing that I described happens in the morning, there's nothing to prevent the officers from submitting an affidavit to a magistrate in the afternoon and execute a search warrant the exact same way. That's a problem. But lawyers are accountable, and they're held to a system of ethics and rules, and even more so with prosecutors. Prosecutors cannot comment on a defendant's rights and disparagingly speak of the defendant during a trial, and a prosecutor, in fact, is obligated the duty to ensure that the defendant has a fair fair go of it in the trial. Prosecuting attorney can't offer evidence that prosecuting attorney or any lawyer for that matter knows to be false. If a prosecutor knows that they're putting a witness on the stand who's a liar, who's lied a lot, ethical issues begin to develop. And these are the kind of issues that we are currently dealing with and are going to be pursuing and hopefully having positive remedies. But, this is beyond even a situation that I ever anticipated. I didn't sign up as a lawyer, and we were prepared to fight the case on the merits of the case. But when you're dealing with such violative behavior and such what I could only describe as abuse of power, and knowing that whether I'm a defense attorney or prosecutor, a transactional lawyer, an administrative law judge, when these kind of violations take place, it stains the entire integrity of the profession. I can't tell you the number of clients of mine that fear the system, fear being prosecuted, think they have no chance, fair shake. And oftentimes it may be true. But when you throw on top of it ethical violations by the office that's actually doing the prosecuting, it creates an appearance of absolute unfairness and inability in any way, shape, or form to get a fair case. And I say those things because there's an issue that's going on that just has completely consumed my office and the work and effort that we've been involved in. And I'm going to read this last paragraph from my pleadings and then move on. But as an attorney practicing for 21 years, I'm disgusted that these issues were not handled ethically by the prosecutor's office. And based upon my oath as a lawyer, my duty and commitment to my client, and to preserve the integrity of the judicial system, we pray for relief. I hope that the court is going to see that some of this behavior is just so outrageous and so unethical that this conduct of office is taking place and that we get proper relief. All right. So I'm done with that part of the rant. I've officially 4 minutes, and I'm just going to talk about this. An exciting thing happened today, and we've talked about it in the show. I mean, exciting in some regards and not in others, and this is going to be much of the topic, but I want to frame the issue that in many cases that I've been involved in, we've had success as a Komorn law with presenting a Section 8 defense and getting dismissals of cases that involved a lot of weight and being able to explain the medical use or being able to get to a jury, which changed the dynamics of the case, and we're able to get resolutions of the case with blockading traffic or attempted transport or disturbing the peace kind of. But anyways, the point is that, and then we had these cases that came out that were so crazy, so insane, that I've literally, I talk about it all the time. In the cases there are People versus Hartwick and People versus Tuttle, and they had a tremendous impact in this one case that I've talked a lot about, John Roberts, the Cannabis Cancer Project, and the impact that case had, and the negative ruling that case was issued, and how in that case the ultimate logic and findings of the court was that the physician involved with the certification needed to know and understand what a reasonable amount of marijuana was necessary for the patient, which is ridiculous. And I've said it's ridiculous. I don't need to talk about it because I have talked about it and I've been argued with about it. I've even been told, Mr. Komorn, this is medical marijuana. Doctors have to know. And I said, that's not true. And I said, look, here's every plausible argument of why these cases are wrong. And this is why you have to stay the case. You've got to set aside this silly, outrageous, stinky verdict that you spent a lot of time with. Not verdict, but opinion. And I know you put a lot of time in it, but you're wrong. You colored inside all the lines, but you started on the wrong page. And to think that a physician is going to know or understand how much marijuana is, this is insane. It's not nowhere. Nowhere can I even find that. Not a thing. Not a prescription. Read the law. Get a concept of what's taking place. And friend, sister, counsel, prosecutor that stands up and says, there's no way that the Michigan Supreme Court are going to take these two cases. I just don't see it. The issues that we were dealing with were too narrow. The Supreme Court would never take it. And this is why the title of the show tonight is I Was Right. And you were wrong, because Michigan Supreme Court is going to set the record straight, and I promise you that they are not going to make a finding that doctors are writing prescriptions for medical marijuana patients. I promise you that. Predicting. I'm looking at my crystal ball. Beyond that, I'd go as far as to say I believe that they are not going to require physicians to know how much marijuana is a reasonable amount necessary, because there's nowhere in the law, there's nowhere in science, there's nowhere in medicine that you can rely upon that as an authority. Just the contrary. I've outlined it. I'm going to be involved with an amicus brief. And trust me, I feel like I've eaten, chewed, swallowed, digested every single argument of why these two cases are terrible. And tonight, I'm happy to say I was right and you were wrong. All right, that's all right. We're going to take a quick break and be back. I want to hear from you. Call numbers 1-347-326-9626, and we will be right back. You listen to Planet Green Trees.